Liked by the sound of violence.
Here's the deal with Greg Hardy. It's always something. It's an illegal knee, it's an inhaler, it's a broken hand. Dude, this guy has more banana peels he slips on than Curious George. I don't know what to do with this guy. And let me take one shot. I know I got 10 seconds. One shot in Inhaler Gate because we all forgot about it because they booked the Volkov fight. Dude, inhaler, you have asthma. You have an inhaler. You're in the cage and you're like, hey, is this cool? You don't already know if it's cool? Is this cool?
Liked by the sound of violence.
Here's the deal with Greg Hardy. It's always something. It's an illegal knee, it's an inhaler, it's a broken hand. Dude, this guy has more banana peels he slips on than Curious George. I don't know what to do with this guy. And let me take one shot. I know I got 10 seconds. One shot in Inhaler Gate because we all forgot about it because they booked the Volkov fight. Dude, inhaler, you have asthma. You have an inhaler. You're in the cage and you're like, hey, is this cool? You don't already know if it's cool? Is this cool? That's like you're at the Scripps spelling bee and you're like, hey, I got a dictionary. Is this cool? No, it's not cool. This is the spelling bee. Dude, you're in a cage fight. No, it's not cool. You should already know that. You have asthma. How do you find that out after the second round? It's all right? Hey, guys, I'm just going to shoot this up in my arm. These steroids, they cool? No, they're not cool, bud. Sorry. You don't know that yet? Please. It's always something with Hardy.
What up, everybody, and welcome back to the world's most chaotic episode of the Sound of Violence podcast. We are an MMA podcast that talks about the MMA podcast you should catch, skip, and can't miss each week, as well as to try and check out a new show. I am Pulver, and I am back, barely, but we got it working, kinda. I'm back yet again on his phone on Skype. My co-host, Chris Dapper. What up, dude?
Just kidding. I'm fucking with you. Pretty just irritated, I guess. I just need to get a new laptop and all that, and this isn't ideal.
Definitely not. Chris is
I'm and my battery's low because I've been dealing with this shit for the past 2 hours. So if I have to put it in, this is what's great about iPhones is you have the stupid Thunderbolt thing for me to even be able to even listen. But then if you happen to charge it, you need a Thunderbolt thing. But luckily I have one of these thingies that you place it on. But
nice.
It's just it's still like once I do that, it's just gonna change the audio to speaker, and then like, what am I supposed to do? Hold this up until my arm gets tired? It's just a fucking mess.
Yeah,
so.
it's going great so far. Let me just say fuck Skype in general again. As someone who has to deal with it every day, not just for the podcast, and also for the podcast.
Oh,
Jesus Christ, Skype sucks dicks.
Besides my complete excitement for this card, I'm also falling asleep because I handled like 4 fucking banh mi sandwiches earlier during our break because I was starving.
Yeah, actually,
I mean, it was good. I don't regret it, but
that's a great segue to our Pop-Off Vodka presents Doug Stanhope presents our sponsors. You use K Sandwiches, right?
K Sandwiches here in San Diego.
Yeah, which is really fire, by the way. They've been around since I've been around, I think.
Yeah, no, I remember one of my best friends growing up. He's Vietnamese, and his parents, we would go there when I was like 10 years old.
Yeah, I remember.
Like, still, I was like hanging out with them. We're like, "Hey, you want to go to K Sandwiches?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" So, it's
fuck yeah, spot. K Sandwiches in Carnival Market, bro. That's that deep Claremont shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Cool. Well, actually, we'll get to our real part. Pop-Off Vodka presents Doug Stanhope presents our sponsor. What are you drinking this week? Straight vodka at this point?
Yes. No. I was thinking of having some beer, but having some every writer's favorite sparkling water. So.
No. Wow. That's what's up. I this week, since originally we were going to record around 11:30 a.m. Pacific, it is now 1:30 a.m. Pacific. So I'm still going to drink it, but it's way less pleasant to have a coconut milk stout in Santee at 1:30 in the afternoon than it is at 11:30. It's just getting pretty warm, so we will see how this goes. But yeah, Firestone's Velvet Merlin. Actually, I guess this is Coconut Merlin, technically.
Yeah, because it's an oatmeal stout, I believe.
Milk stout, I think.
Okay. I'm thinking of a different one.
No, you're thinking of the same one. They probably use oats in it.
Okay.
But technically they qualify as a milk stout, I'm guessing, because it's brewed with lactose, I think. That's qualification for milk stout, right?
Yeah. God damn it. What's ironic about this podcast is that the video is way clearer on my phone than on a piece of shit. Like, I could actually see myself because I look at it on YouTube. I'm like, damn, I just look different. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's because it's potato.
Yeah, you can actually see because Chris is in 1080 and I'm in 720.
Yeah, you can actually see
so
my
it's real
teeth.
Solid. Yeah, it's legit. Also, big shouts to...
Let's do it every time on the phone. Fuck it.
I mean, to be fair, your audio's not terrible. It's not that much. It's better than it is on Skype sometimes.
Yeah, to be fair, iPhones always have great cameras. Even as ridiculous as the new phone looks like with the fucking, like, rocket launcher looking thing. I know my dad has a new phone, and the camera's insane. That beer's good. So, shouts out to Apple. I mean...
No shouts out to fucking Apple.
I mean, not really.
Steve Jobs is where he belongs. Fuck Apple. To be fair, they lock everything down to a point where it's unusable. So, or at least maybe it's just because I have a tech background.
My tinfoil hat on. I'm convinced that they send out signals to the older models to make them worse when you update them.
They don't send out signals. That's how they intentionally don't minimize processing power so that everything runs like shit. So you're forced to upgrade. Let's not talk about planned obsolescence on this podcast, even though it's a real thing that y'all should be aware of. Actually, I just, 2 days ago, got a Galaxy S10 Plus, and it's great, just like the 8 was. So
nice.
Anyway, not a tech podcast. I kind of want to be a beer podcast after trying this oatmeal, or this milk stout.
We have the next 2 weeks off, right?
We do, which means we definitely have a commentary coming in the next 2 weeks.
All right. We'll do something fun for that.
Yeah. Oh, good God. I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty excited about not having another week of a shitty fucking foreign card.
I wish G6 was still in town because he was here the last 2 weeks, but he's back at work.
Such is the life of a pilot and whatnot.
Yeah.
Or drunk. Pick your poison, really. So, on that note, we will go ahead and jump into format. Man, it's been a weird week for MMA podcasts. I feel like, well, we'll get to that. Almost every podcast could be a skip for me this week, except for a couple, just because.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. They're all not really that great.
Well, and the biggest problem is everybody talked about the same two things, which is Drunk Nick Diaz and KSI and Logan Paul.
Yeah, which I avoided. I didn't even see highlights. All I saw on Twitter.
Oh, well, to be fair, there wasn't a lot of highlights of Nick Diaz being
porn star
drunk.
was like shaking her ass or something like that. But other than that,
oh, you mean highlights of that? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's the only part of that fight I saw was some porn star shaking her ass during the fight or something, and then like the decision, which I don't care. It's just
which I believe we actually talked about on the last show.
If I'm Billy Joe Saunders, I'm never boxing again. At least for that promotion.
Yeah, it's a shit show. But we will. So I should jump into. I always almost forget that we do this news segment now. So recent news in MMA podcasting, as far as I knew. If you guys ever hear news stories that I'm sleeping on about MMA podcasts, shows skipping weeks, anything like that, always let us know, and we'll shout it out and give you credit. But some things that happened this week: MMA Junkie Radio hit 3,000 episodes, which is fucking ludicrous.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Big shouts to Gorgeous George and Goes on that. That is insane. And I'll talk a little bit about it later. But it's cool that show still exists, even though it exists in a very different format than it used to. Just that it's still around is kind of neat. Speaking of things still being around, Sherdog is now back on. Between Rounds and TJ DeSantis is now back on Sherdog for the Sherdog Radio Network, which kind of exists again, which is fucking insane news. And I'll get to that here in a bit as well. Some rumors. Actually, you know what? I'll keep going with Between Rounds. Stephen Warman Wright, who hosts the Warman Kickfighting podcast, is going to be joining Between Rounds with TJ DeSantis, and I'm pretty excited about that. And Megan Anderson is going to be doing a show on Between Rounds Radio with on TJ DeSantis' network.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm excited about all those. I think those will be neat as hell. And I already love Stephen Warman Wright's podcast. It's kind of random when it happens since it's mostly kickboxing focused, but I really enjoy it for sure. And I'm excited to see him get some more kind of feedback and involved on that stuff since he's been a long-time Sherdog Radio Network guy. Not like directly involved, but like guys like him and Schwan Humes who've just either been callers or dudes who've talked to Jeff and Breen and all those guys forever. So that'll be cool. And then here's the rumor section. I think Pull No Punches might either be ending or leaving Bloody Elbow Presents. I'm not positive. But they haven't put out a show in a little bit from what I've seen.
Was that the one with
Kajon Johnson and Shaq, yeah. And so I don't know what's going on with that show, but it feels like there's a change coming, so maybe something to keep an eye on. But those were the main news stories I had for this week for MMA podcasts. So why don't we go ahead and jump into format officially. And one thing I don't know, why was I just holding a bong that entire time? Don't know why. I just distracted the shit out of myself with that. We're jumping into format. There's a link in the description on the website for all the shows we talk about. It is hopefully also in your podcast player, but it depends on what podcast player you're using. But if you go to thesoundofviolence.com, we have links to everything that we discuss. So, Chris, why don't you go ahead and start us off with the MMA podcast you recommend people catch this week?
All right, so my camera's probably going to turn off because I have to check my notes, which is hilarious.
That's right. So, as you guys can see, Chris is now a portion of the Skype logo that crops weirdly.
Honestly, I only had like 3 notes because this week was weird. And there's there's 10, 15 shows that were a skip. A-Side live chat was solid because they mainly talked about matchups in the welterweight division at this point in time.
Yep.
I think they were talking about Tyron Woodley potentially is fighting Leon Edwards. That's the rumor I heard. I think that might be getting signed.
Didn't Tyron already have a fight book?
I think that's what it is. I think he's fighting Leon Edwards on the January 18th card.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I believe he's fighting Leon Edwards, which I'm down. And then...
Yeah, he's been rumored to have a fight book for a while now. Also, of course, apologies if you guys are listening to the audio version and you hear a bunch of fucking fumbling noises. It's because Chris is literally using the thing he's recording from, so...
Yeah. Let's see. And this is my only thoughts on this. The Nick Diaz interview on ESPN. I mean, the guy's been an alcoholic for the past, I don't know how many years. I can't remember if he was like straight edge when he was fighting or what have you, but I remember.
Also, cheers.
Yeah, cheers, right? Cheers, Nick. Cheers to getting better. I don't know.
Cheers to drinking.
Sure.
Yeah. I think
the thing with
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the thing with that is whatever he was, if he was straight edge before, or not drinking right before he started drinking.
You mean pre-Ronda Rousey and post-Ronda Rousey?
Yeah, clearly he has a serious problem. I don't want to ever see him fight again until he can get himself back together. I don't know. I just don't want to see him fight, and I know the Diaz fanboys are like, "Oh, Prime Nick would destroy Jorge." It's like no one's not questioning that, dumbass. No one
also,
should see
very
Nick
different
Diaz.
sizes.
Yes, Nick Diaz is a fucking middleweight. Anyways, my point is, no, I would never want to see that fight. There's plenty of other fights I'd rather see Masvidal fight. I don't even want to see Nick Diaz fight. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
I would love to see Nick Diaz compete in grappling competitions. I think that would be dope as shit. But, yeah, the whole Diaz thing is rough. It's one of those things where I don't know. I feel like we put too much weight behind interviews. Ariel does get attention, and I feel like this is one of those times where the only reason everybody's talking about this is because it was Ariel. Because this interview has happened and will happen again with a whole bunch of like small Stockton podcasts, and nobody would give a fuck outside of like a comment here or there. But because Ariel sat down and then just basically didn't say anything and let Nick ramble, then it gets weird. Like Nick has always had crazy anxiety issues, and he's
I could tell watching that. Yeah.
Well, I have a lot of the same problems Nick does speaking wise, where you're like constantly grasping for words and then having mild panic attacks during it. So
no, I've dealt with that too.
Yeah,
it's pretty common.
Yeah, and it's a thing where like definitely drinking doesn't make it better, and I don't even want to get into was Nick drunk or not, because that shit seems like hungover problems. Like, I've sounded like that on this podcast, I'm sure, where I have, like, pounded a couple shots to try and recover from a really rough hangover. And then halfway through, I'm like, why am I talking about fucking Brink for 13 minutes on this podcast? So,
is it because you're a soul skater, dude?
Oh, dog. We both talked about that last week, and then we texted. We were both literally watching Brink at the same time, which I wanted to so bad. I even pulled the clip, but I don't think I should put Brink on YouTube. I was gonna pull the sellout clip of Gabriella telling Andy Brinker that he is everybody needs the money, Brink. It's so fucking funny, but I did not, because Disney, I've heard they don't like people using their content, so I'm gonna avoid it. But it's, oh boy. Anyway, I just Nick Diaz that entire segment and took it completely off the rails. So I guess we will keep on moving on. I actually didn't catch A-Side. Who was the guest on A-Side? Do you remember?
I think it was Pete Carroll.
Nice. Big PC fan. Cool, man. I'm going to have to give that one a listen. At least, I'm just glad that they were one of the few who didn't spend the entire time talking about KSI and Logan Paul or Nick Diaz. Because Jesus Christ, it was everybody this week, except for a few who are actually the ones I picked. So, did you have any other catches for this week, or was that the only one?
Yeah, while I fumble real quick, and now I'm on my phone's like low battery. No shit. Yeah. Let's see. I had I think Fights Gone By. He had a good breakdown and really written notes. Heavy Hands had a couple of things. This was mostly just a breakdown of the card. And then the only thing I can mention that was very good was the Joe Rogan with Adesanya. Was solid.
That was very solid. It always is. Like,
So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the charger. It's probably going to switch the audio. We'll see real quick. But go ahead and you can start talking while I figure this bullshit out.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. You guys may hear a quick echo. There it was. When it tries to pick up my voice, and then hopefully it should clip most of that. But again, since we are having to do like an impromptu setup, big apologies on that. And I promise it'll be better next week. Because Jesus Christ, I can't deal with these audio issues. Also, I love how you can like half hear a clip of me mumbling, just like a tiny bit after every sentence. It's definitely not going to distract the shit out of me. So my catch for this week is MMA stories. I believe it's called Fixed Fights, and then a bunch of other things. But this is the show hosted by Monty Cox, longtime MMA manager, and Jeremy Horn, of course, fighter who competed in Pride, UFC, fucking every barn in the Midwest. And it's just it's a great episode. First off, I'd like to commend them on not talking, from what I remember, at all about Logan Paul versus KSI, whose names I should really stop saying out loud. LP versus KS, or they didn't really at all talk about Nick Diaz's interview with Ariel Helwani, and so it's pretty fucking refreshing. There's a lot of talk just about the old days, which is why I like this show a lot. Just Monty talking about how Jeremy was never one of those guys who would ask for like crazy money or like would live extravagantly or anything. The only thing he really ever wanted was to be able to pay rent, buy a video game once a month, and buy burgers, which is a fucking respect. I believe even TJ DeSantis was like, yeah, fucking, that's pretty much everybody, Jeremy. That's pretty goddamn normal. So, they also talk a bit about Jens Pulver being a diva, which, I mean, obviously, I'm the biggest Jens Pulver fan. Considering his last name is half the reason I know about the sport, because everybody would ask me if I was related to him. But it's Jens, and Jens has talked about this too, with mental health stuff and all kinds of stuff, especially back when he was fighting, that he went through a lot of stuff, and so there's a lot of crazy stories about around that time. And it was cool hearing Monty talk about that. They clearly on that show, like, they don't really hold back on saying crazy shit or like semi-illegal shit that people were doing back then. Like, just because I think it's because they're not guys who normally do like public speaking kind of stuff outside of like just fight stuff. So saying illegal shit into a microphone doesn't necessarily make them question themselves too much, especially knowing their backgrounds. But like, for example, they talked about Brad Kohler, and they're like, TJ DeSantis, I believe, was the person who brought up that Brad Kohler went and... Oh, God, I just got super distracted thanks to that fucking echo. Brad Kohler talked about... Oh, TJ talked about Brad Kohler's... Or, sorry, Alberto Del Rio's only win in MMA was over Brad Kohler via shoulder injury like a minute and a half in. And then Monty Cox just straight up says, oh, so it was a fixed fight. Just straight throwing. He's like, oh, I've seen Kohler do that a couple times. Just straight throwing that out there like it's a thing that's not super illegal. They also talk about how I won't say Joey's last name like TJ did on Between Rounds or on Behind the Paywall this week, but Joey, the odds maker who used to work out of Costa Rica for, I believe, you know what? I'm not going to say. I'm going to say if you figure out it's a odds maker, I believe out of Costa Rica, and they used to also be a fight promotion that should be able to clue you in. But yeah, evidently Monty Cox was making so much money off of Joey on the fights for his fighters that he would, at a certain point, Joey was like, listen, I'm going to set the line. I'll let you put $5,000 down on whatever you want, and then I'm going to change the lines because you're killing me. Which is also pretty fucking legal. I'm pretty sure, but it's fantastic. And they talk a lot about the old days in rings in Japan. Monty talks about packaging some of Jeremy's fights to get another dude fights. Where he's like, oh, well, yeah, Jeremy will come fight for your organization, but we need you to also have this dude on the card just so he can get paid. They talk about Tim Sylvia's early days and his win over Rico Rodriguez. And I think Monty, I can't remember how much it was, but Monty said that the biggest money he ever won, was it? I know he said he won a ton of money on gens back in the day because he would just bet on his fighters all the time. Which is also, I'm pretty sure not, I don't know, it's like, at the very least, it's gray market. You know what I mean? So, pretty fucking ridiculous overall, but a really good episode.
Nice, man. Yeah, and, yeah, I mean, it's cool that they're honest, maybe a little too honest, but,
TJ says he cuts a crazy amount of stuff out of that show.
Yeah, I would imagine, just based on what's already on there. So
yeah, definitely. So it's pretty fucking dope. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. I believe it's available on just the regular Between Rounds feed that's publicly available with ads. But I always recommend the Patreon versions of everything because they can be more honest on that. So I would assume that some stuff might get edited out of the public versions versus the Patreon versions. I don't have any confirmation of that. I would assume. Cool, man. So do you have any MMA podcasts you recommend people skip this week?
Dude, all of them.
Yeah.
Because they were all, like you said, about the interview with the shill and then the two YouTubers who should not be being promoted.
Yep.
Especially the fucking blonde-haired douchebag who just likes to exploit shit for money and is a psychopath. But other than that, yeah, I don't got shit. I mean,
yeah, no, that's pretty much how I felt about this week too. It was a kind of a barren wasteland for talk outside of the two main topics that everybody felt the need to cover.
Give a shout out to the YouTube channel. I try to plug them if I can. MMA World. They aggregate MMA figures and coaches and all that, and they're basically how I get sometimes not like necessarily news updates, but kind of fighter updates on who's talking shit, what's going on, and who is it. And you'll get clips from different podcasts as well. And I saw, no disrespect to Unfiltered, I don't listen to them anymore because most of the time it's just Matt Serra and the Phoenix chick.
Yeah, I try to catch it every once in a while, but
yeah, and I hate kind of being preferential that way. I'm not trying to avoid ever anyone's podcast unless, like I said, it's usually always guest. It depends on the guest.
Yeah, a lot of shows are guest dependent. Ariel's show is the perfect example of a guest dependent show.
It's like, hey, I heard you going through a divorce. Well, here on the other line is your ex-wife.
Right. And also, let's talk to The Rock for an extended segment where he gets to just look buff and be cool.
Yes. Hey, guys, how's it going? Rock here. Just got done pumping some iron. And it's, did I show you my Under Armour logo? Oh, yeah, say, okay.
Can you smell what Rocky Maivia is cooking? Oh, shit. Spoiler alert. It's still matzo balls because Ariel has one gimmick.
Yeah, I saw he had a thing with Action Bronson. It's just like...
He did that with Izzy, too. I guess it's his new thing is matzo ballin' with, which, boy. It seems like a bad bit that It's the Real would make fun of for coming up with.
Well, to be fair, I'm not Jewish, so maybe I appreciate more if I was. Either way, I don't care.
To be fair, I appreciate the shit out of some matzo balls.
Oh, no, I'm not going to...
Pause.
When I was in the... I had some matzo ball soup at Castellucci. It was fire.
Right.
So I'll never talk shit on that.
No, to be fair, Jewish delis and Jewish food in general is the fucking best.
No, straight money.
Shouts to DZ Aikens all goddamn day.
Yeah, a little pricey for my budget, but it's good. Go out with the family, so shouts out.
I'll fucks with a pastrami sandwich any day, dog. Yeah, I agree, though, on the skip. It was kind of that way all fucking week, it seemed like, with everybody just talked about the same thing, and nobody had a unique take. They all just said the exact same thing. They're all just like, oh, well, is Nick FCTE or was Nick drunk? Nick drinks in Vegas. Oh, well, Logan Paul versus KSI, or Logan KS versus Paul. There was porn stars and influencers in the audience. They did a boxing, and now they will get more boxings. You're like, what the fuck is everybody doing? So, yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I didn't have a specific skip either. It's just all the shows that talked about the exact same thing are eminently skippable.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, my phone is charging. People are very confused in this camera angle because I have to look down at the floor because I can't.
It's a remarkable camera angle where it looks like you're just being severed at the neck.
Yeah. What's funny too is that it's been charging for the past maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and it's still at the same percentage because this Skype is using so much battery.
Yeah.
So just fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
So the staying at 21%. This is great.
It's working well. All right. Well, on that note, do you have any MMA podcasts you recommend people can't miss this week?
I would say the Joe Rogan experience with Adesanya was really solid.
Yeah.
He's a very likable guy. I know in the past some of his criticizers or critics, I should say, if maybe kind of said he's a little overconfident or cocky. I don't think he labels himself as overconfident. I think he kind of details his own flaws, his mindset too. But sometimes I think that's what you need just to kind of get your goals short term and long term. So I respect him a lot more than I used to, especially with this whole ongoing new rivalry or feud with John Jones. So
right.
Yeah, and I think that fight is inevitable at this point, and I think it'll be at 205 in 2021. So.
Yeah, I think it is inevitable. I do really like though that Adesanya keeps going out of his way to say that he keeps going out of his way to say that he wants to just clear out the division. He doesn't want to just jump around and stall out divisions, which. It's because he's a real fight fan, so you gotta respect the fuck out of it.
Yeah, this is why, and we've said it time and time again before. I think you would agree with me that you're not a huge fan of the whole double champ or simultaneous belt holders.
That's right.
Being, Joseph Benavidez should have had his title shot by now, and Henry Cejudo's going around saying, you know what, I don't think I want to go back down to 125. It's like, well, defend or vacate, or what's this thing you've been saying the past 2 years about your flyweight savior? I don't get it. So, AKA, oh wait, I can get championship money or whatever, defend my belt and not have to cut as much weight. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, it's frustrating for sure. Actually, shouts out to the article you have on our website, thesoundofviolence.com, which talks about all the problem with the double champ era. Which I feel like you nailed that timing on that thing because it was right when everybody's mood changed on it.
Yeah, I need to do another one soon. I was trying to remember what the fuck it was going to be about. I know there's plenty of crazy shit going on now and MMA. So I'll think of something. It's not going to necessarily be something that's like pessimistic or something. Maybe I'll do something that kind of is like enlightening. I don't know. I'll figure something out. I need to definitely kind of get back into that mode.
Yeah.
Well, barring a new fucking computer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, actually, one thing that could be interesting that I would recommend is we could probably use an article on how the entire concept of a boxer versus an MMA fighter is a fucking farce, especially when it's the idea that a boxer is going to cross over. Because I don't know about you, but very few people in the world are like, hey, let me try a brand new thing for less money and put in a lot more work.
No, the Tyson Fury thing is a fucking sham.
Yeah.
Is it possible that Fury would ever want to do MMA? I'm sure, but I think it'd be after he's done boxing.
Well, and they would never pay him what he was going to require. It'll never happen.
And I don't blame him because he's already getting $30 million boxing. He'd probably, okay, give me $10 million minimum. All headline.
Yeah, there's no reason for him to do it because he's going to lose money by doing it.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but the Jerry episode was really solid. I did enjoy that they were hanging out drinking whiskey the entire time as well.
Yeah, what do they drink usually? Beer?
It depends a lot. Mostly it's coffee. It depends on the guest. Like, I don't think they drank in the Ari episode. Honestly, normally it's Buffalo Trace whiskey if they're drinking whiskey, or it'll be fucking Heineken's because Rogan likes Heineken's for some reason.
I mean, I'm not going to outwardly just choose it over other options. I don't dislike it, but it's a easy to drink skunky lager. I
was gonna say skunky is the most apt word to include in that.
Yeah. They did back their brown one that they had. That's actually not too bad.
Yeah, and the canned versions, to be fair, not skunky, obviously. So.
Yeah, see, people seem to forget that's kind of how that works. But then again, my boss at work, he says cans and bottles are pretty much the same taste. I don't know.
Yes, if the beer is completely clean and doesn't have any off. How dead that actually is. It says it's sending 0. It's just dropping hella frames. See when it fixes itself. It says it's about to fix itself, but it's not. There we go. Hey, I think we're back. All right. Okay, everything's not broken. Everything's fine. We're cool. Nothing's broken. Okay, so now that nothing's broken, I'm just going to keep on moving on since obviously nothing broke. Oh, God. This editing's going to be so fun. I have 2 can't miss episodes to talk about this week. My first can't miss episode is Severe MMA, episode 235. I do want to give full disclosure on this that I was talking to Shawnee Podcasts on Twitter this week, and he did here. Oh, I don't have my phone's off. I believe that I don't want to misquote what he sent me, but it was along the lines of in all caps with a bunch of crying, laughing emojis afterwards. We're can't miss this week, and to be fair, they are can't miss this week. Originally I was like, well now I can't put you as can't miss, but they didn't talk about KSI and Logan Paul. If they talked about Nick Diaz, it was extremely brief. And not at all the focus of the show. The main thing they talked about was the big Cage Warriors 110 card that happened in Cork, Ireland recently. Sean was in the building, and he talks about how it felt like the old days of Irish MMA. He does get into a bit of Cage Warriors not working directly with the IMMAA, or the EMA, or however we're abbreviating that fucking thing, which is like the regulating body in Ireland that it's kind of taken form after, I believe, I hope I'm not fucking up this story, and you should definitely listen to Severe MMA, because I probably am. But I believe they were the ones that took over when there was the death in a local promotion over there, and John Kavanaugh and some other people formed a kind of a group to try and regulate MMA more safely. And Graham Boylan, who is the promoter for Cage Warriors, they talk a lot about his statements about Kavanaugh and some of the conflicts of interest that John Kavanaugh has in Ireland. I just stated, with the not only the, I don't know if you want to call it a regulating body, it's kind of a regulating body. It works kind of different than it does over here in the U.S., but just kind of the conflicts of interest between Kavanaugh's relationship with Bellator, which is pretty fucking sus and something to keep an eye on. Can't be going around calling your gym Straight Blast or Straight Bellator gym or whatever the fuck it's calling it nowadays. Yeah, it's just interesting. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the local Irish scene, between just the Cage Warriors Kavanaugh beef with Graham Boylan. Also, Kavanaugh is beefing hard right now with guys like Paddy Pimblett, or I keep saying Paddy Pimblett, Paddy Houlihan, and I believe Tom King is the other guy who is part of Team KF, who's been showing out pretty big in Ireland recently. They actually looked really good. I I think Ian Gary is with Team KF. And they're some of the guys showing out on the Cage Warriors card just last weekend. But it's just interesting to hear all that information about all the things that are going on in the area. They also talk, like, they do a pretty deep dive on Cage Warriors 110 and take a look at some of the people you should keep an eye on. And then they briefly recap the Moscow card. They also talk about the Sao Paulo card that's coming up. It's just a really good episode overall, and it's exactly what I want from a podcast, which is they're giving information that only they have access to, or that only they have the depth of knowledge required for. They are not just repeating the same fucking bullet points that everybody else is repeating just because it gets clicks and because the name Nick Diaz will get you more views than writing Ian Gary or Joe McColgan or Cage Warriors 110. And I just respect the fuck out of it. I think it's great. I think more shows should be doing that. Like, I would love to see more regional coverage from almost every podcast. It'd be great. So that, and it's just a fun one. And Sean Sheehan's a fucking sweetheart. So I can't recommend Severe MMA enough. But again, full disclosure, I have been talking with Sean all week, and so I don't know. I would like to think that I'm not being biased by picking it, but I could possibly be very biased by picking it. I just don't have the outsider view on it. But the other podcast that's a can't miss for me this week is Between the Links, episode 26. Chris, I've talked to you about this show before, right? The one that's like, I believe it's Around the Horn is the show that it's like. Is that right?
Yeah. I believe you mentioned this. It rings a bell.
Yeah, it's the one where basically they have a bunch of guys come on and debate topics, and then the person who wins the debate gets to proceed on, and they just kind of go round for round on topics.
Loses out, they basically get frozen in carbonite, Star Wars style.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. They get never mind. It's gonna make a fucking Brink reference, but I'm not gonna do it again. Yeah, no, they get sent.
Gotta do the 540.
That's right, dog. You gotta get that inverted 540, or else you're not gonna be able to be Pete from So Weird. Fucking, I need to slow down with the shitty Disney Plus references. Although I did watch Under Wraps recently, so what do I know? All right. Oh yeah. So Between the Links, it was Keith Schillen, John Franklin, and Craig. Fuck, I can't remember Craig's last name. Craig from Canada, and they had on Aaron Bronstetter as the guest for the episode. So the first question was, has Zabit earned a title shot? And what's next for Calvin Cater? They also talk about Hardy versus Volkov. And on our intro, you guys actually heard, I believe it was John Franklin, who had one of the greatest rants about Greg Hardy I've ever heard. I believe the line was, "Oh, I'm gonna use a dictionary during the spelling bee. Is that cool?" Which is fucking brilliant. It's real good. It's just a real good quote. However, not the best quote on the show, not the best quote of the week. On the upcoming break, you guys will hear Aaron Bronstetter's feelings on. So I should have a clarification. I shit on all these shows for talking about Nick Diaz. The greatest quote of the week is Aaron Bronstetter on the Nick Diaz interview with Ariel. So, I don't know what that means. Maybe you can talk about the Nick Diaz thing as well and make it fun, which Aaron Bronstetter absolutely did. But, good God, I don't even want to spoil it. I just want you guys to go into it. I'm not going to say anything other than just listen on the break for Aaron Bronstetter's takes on the Nick Diaz interview, because good God, was it money. I can't give enough love to that thing. It's fucking insane. So absolutely everybody should listen to Between the Links. They had a really good episode last week with Danny Segura as well. So that show's getting it's always been good. It's getting really good. And more, you can see more journalists are starting to get excited about it, because it's a show that should exist in MMA, and it's good to see guys like the Loudmouth MMA Network making it happen. So can't recommend it enough.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it's really good, and they've been doing a lot of really solid shows on Loudmouth MMA recently, so definitely worth a listen. Did you check out any new shows this week?
Unfortunately, not.
All right, well then I will burn through a couple that I listened to. DeSantis and Duffy, episode 1. I don't know if that's the actual title of the show yet, but this was the show that TJ did on his return to the Sherdog Radio Network with Ben Duffy, who works at Sherdog. Shocking. There's a lot of KSI and Logan Paul talk. There's also some Alberto Del Rio versus Tito and Combate talk. They talk about the double standard with Pride, about how everyone always just, without hesitation, says Pride was the best, but also Pride was a bunch of carny shit, and it's interesting. They also talk about TJ DeSantis. His first interview way back in the day was with Nick Diaz, and he said he recorded an interview with Nick about 3 times, and Nick, after everyone, was like, "Can you not put that out?" So pretty solid. MMA Oddsbreaker is the other show I checked out this week, which is, I believe it's MMA Oddsbreaker Daily is the technical name of the podcast. This is one that's hosted by Adam Martin. It's a daily news show. The runtime of the one I listened to was around 17 minutes, and it was on Frankie Edgar's bantamweight debut. And mostly he just went through and talked about a bunch of the fights that were announced for the Raleigh card. I've seen some of the other ones. He talks about, oh shit, we're Judo Bill's entertainment right now, which means he's fucked because he hasn't realized how bad Chris's audio setup is right now. But shouts out to Judo Bill and his Blizzard that he got at Dairy Queen. Fucking Dairy Queen. I haven't gone to a Dairy Queen in like a fucking decade. But to be fair, I think I only know of one in San Diego. There's one out here too. Yeah, I haven't been to it because it's not the fucking 90s, but there is one. Let's see. So, oh right. So the MMA. He does the daily show. I've seen him talk about the Bellator cards and just it's just like a recent news show. However, for the MMA Oddsbreaker Daily, he also does a breakdown podcast. So I listened to I listened to UFC Sao Paulo one where he had a guest named Cole Shelton on. Runtime's around 51 minutes. Just a really solid podcast. I enjoy it for sure. It's just a kind of a straightforward breakdown show. They previewed the entire Sao Paulo card, talked about Bellator 234, and recapped UFC Moscow and Bellator 233 a bit. Definitely a good Bellator breakdown if you're looking for one of those. Because I know there's not a lot of shows who are doing consistent Bellator breakdowns. So I would recommend checking that out because I did enjoy it quite a bit. So their breakdown show and their news show on MMA Oddsbreaker, I believe if you search MMA OB on your podcast catcher, should show up. But it's pretty solid. Let's see. You said you had covered most of your honorable mentions, right?
Yeah, I only had notes for like maybe 4 things, because there's just a shit ton of skips.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, like we've been saying over and over, everybody talked about the same shit this week. Also, I do really enjoy how you have like a Neighbor Wilson from Home Improvement look going on with the way the camera is working. It's pretty good. Yeah. Well, shit, does that make me Tim the Toolman Taylor? Because I am not down.
I mean, where's Pamela Anderson when I need her right now, right?
For real. Pamela Anderson. No one. You know, I just did the math on his coke conviction and them being on that show.
And my cocaine. That sounds good. Alleged.
Yeah. No, that's not alleged. He was arrested for dealing coke.
I'm talking about me. Like saying,
yeah, your alleged coke dealing, right.
I theoretically think that sounds good right now.
To be fair, yeah, nothing like cocaine, 90-degree weather, and stouts. That sounds awful. But then again, it's not nearly as hot where you are. So,
Dude, what can I say?
All right. So, some other honorable mentions that I had: Coast to Coast Combat Hour, MMA All Day Every Day was the name of it. That was a really good episode. I believe Ed acquired the nickname Just Bleed Ed, which is pretty good. They also used the phrase about bare knuckle fighting championships. They don't need to find the best boxer in the world. They just need to find their butterbean, which I was a big fucking fan of. I really like Matt and Ed. They're good guys, so definitely check out Coast to Coast Combat Hour. MMA yesterday was solid. It was on UFC 37, which is the infamous card where where Bustamante beat Lindland twice in the same fight, because John McCarthy did not acknowledge the tap the first time when Lindland lied and said he didn't tap. So that's a pretty wild one. Also, there's a young Phil Baroni being brash as shit, which is always fun. Severe MMA, the rewatch for Cage Warriors 110 was really good. Sean took a look at some of the future Irish talent that could be headed to the UFC. Guys like Ian Gary, who I mentioned, it's not Richard Keeley, Reese McKee. Jesus Christ. I'm combining all kinds of names now.
Played Jaws and James Bond, and he also played...
Wait, what was that?
I thought you said Richard Keel, and I was gonna say that's a famous actor from the 70s. He also played Jaws and James Bond, and he fucking played Happy Gilmore's boss, Mr.
I know. Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's hilarious. Let's see. MMA Vivisection for UFC Sao Paulo was really solid. Heavy Hands 290, which you mentioned, was really good episode. And Connor is extremely excited about the 2 weekends off. They also talked about how Oliveira versus Jared Gordon really feels like they just wanted Oliveira to fight Nick Lentz for a fourth time, but couldn't make it happen, which I appreciated. Fight Court with King Mo, which is the show that King Mo and Rob Tatum do. They talk about the, I believe it's called King Mo Discusses His MMA Swan Song. So it's mostly about King Mo's retirement and kind of what's next for him. It's an interesting episode. King Mo is one of the most honest dudes in the sport, and I've always enjoyed listening to him talk, so it was cool hearing that. Also insane that after he lost that fight, he still went and had his pro wrestling debut the next day, which is ridiculous. Loudmouth MMA, their breakdown for UFC Sao Paulo with Max Friedman and Marcel Dorf is really solid. I enjoyed that one for sure. Writer and the Fighter, episode 50. It was just a solid fucking episode. They also go off on the... you know what? They made actually another very good and interesting take on the Nick Diaz thing, where they compared Nick Diaz to Evan Tanner. And I thought that was a super apt comparison and a interesting / scary one when you think about kind of the comparisons and the implications behind that. But it's really interesting, and yeah, I like Rider and the Fighter a lot, and I thought that was a very prescient take that they had on that. They also talk about Ed Herman's fight in Russia, since of course Jake Smith is teammates with Ed Herman at ATT Portland. I think that's the name of that gym, right? I think it's ATT Portland. It's ATT. I think it's Portland. I'm worried I'm getting the city wrong. It's the ATT gym Paige Van Zant's at. I think it's Portland. And then MMA Junkie Radio episode 3000, which we talked about. Big shouts to them for their 3000th episode, even if they did talk about KSI versus Logan Paul. And they used the phrase, an episode of MMA Junkie Radio wouldn't be complete without a Connor update. But it's their 3000th episode, so I'll let it slide. Cool, man. Did you have any honorable mentions you wanted to throw out there for, or not honorable mentions, but well-rounded shows for non-MMA related stuff?
I mean, shouts out to Disney Plus now that we keep talking about it.
Yeah, I know. I feel like a fucking shill because Disney's a horrible company run by bad people, probably.
Disney will probably own us soon, too.
Well, I mean, to be fair, yeah, because China owns Disney, so it's really just a trickle down.
Then again, we already did say, I already did say fuck China, so...
Oh yeah, we have a whole bunch, which is another reason why I did not use the Brink clip in the clip I'm going to play.
Yeah, but I guess that's the non-MMA thing.
Yeah.
If 90s kid, like you and myself, you'll find a lot of things on there that remind you of your childhood.
Just about everything that's dope is on there. There's no Torkelsons. There's no Under Wraps. There's no Susie Q, which I really fucks with those three things. My love of Southern accents comes directly from the Torkelsons. But yeah, it's really, they have fucking everything on there. So.
8,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They had fucking Old Yeller. They got like bed knobs and broomsticks. They got fucking bunch of anime stuff. They even have, since they own Fox, they have like the Spider-Man cartoon, the fucking X-Men.
Simpsons.
Simpsons, yeah, I was watching this. I haven't watched The Simpsons in a long time, man. It's some classic fucking episodes. I was on, and of course, The Mandalorian, which is the most expensive show of all time, and I can tell why. And it's entertaining.
Yeah, I've been hearing good things about it. I haven't checked it out yet, but
you like Star Wars or mildly like it, you'll dig it, especially because you got Pena from fucking Narcos. So,
right.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I guess actually on a related note, one of my well-rounded shows I wanted to shout out was Defunct Land, which is the YouTube show ran by Kevin Perjurer, I believe is his name. And he did a Defunct Land. Defunct Land is essentially, he talks about old roller coasters or amusement parks or rides, that kind of stuff that are no longer around. And he did one on the childhood amusement park that Walt Disney went to called Electric Park, which was a big influence on Walt Disney evidently as a kid. So super interesting and pretty cool to, just a crazy background that I'm excited. He just started season 3 of his show, and it seems like it's going to be mostly focused around Walt Disney and kind of his rise and where he came up with a lot of his ideas, which means I'm hoping that we're going to get a big-ass Knott's Berry Farm episode from him, which would be dope as shit. Let's see. The other ones I want to shout out, Joe Rogan Experience with Ari Shaffir. I don't remember the number. It just came out. Oh, shit. I should have looked this up ahead of time. Joe Rogan Experience with Ari Shaffir, number 1384. Really solid. It's just Joe and Ari hanging out, talking shit, smoking joints. It's really good. Talking about how comedy's dangerous again, and Ari fucking loves it. Also, Ari gets very high on that show. And then Four Brewers, episode 277. Matt Becker is back in California and was on the show. So the fourth brewer returned to Four Brewers, which is big fucking news in the world of, I don't know, brewing podcasts that I listen to, I guess. So pretty cool. I'm excited about it. So definitely recommend checking that out. Also, if you guys are not listening to Issues with Andy, the Doug Stanhope kind of related podcast with Andy Andrist, Chad Shank, Brett Erickson, and Greg Chaley, it's fucking incredible, and they say crazy shit on it, so definitely check that out. Oh gosh, cool, man. Well, we will go ahead and wrap this segment here, and then we will be back to briefly cover this UFC Sao Paulo card. It's gonna be interesting to see how this goes, considering Chris is on his phone streaming. So I don't know how this is gonna work out, but we will figure it out. So we'll be back here in just a bit to do that, and in the meantime, we have this clip, which is fucking incredible, of Aaron Bronstetter having the greatest take of all time on the Nick Diaz interview with Ariel Helwani. So check that out. It's the clip from Between the Links.
Liked by the sound of violence. All right, Aaron, what did you take away from that conversation? What stood out to you, once that interview is over today?
When I got to the Nick Diaz interview is, when you go to the grocery store and you go and you check all the milk and you're looking at the dates and some of them expired, some of them aren't. But then when you go to your car in the parking lot, you go and you get in your car and you drive, and then when you figure out you're driving, you see the guy next to you, and he gives you a look, and then you rev your engine a little bit, and it's time to race, but then the guy doesn't want to race, but you still want to race him, and then I know the guy's got like a family and stuff, but like I just can't wrap my head around why this guy with a family wants to race me all of a sudden, and then so I race him, but he's not going to race me. So then how am I supposed to race him? You know what I mean? Like, if he's not going to race, who's going to race in this situation? So then when you eventually get to the lights and you signal left, but then you want to make a right turn, and then suddenly you realize you haven't picked up your dry cleaning yet, so you make a U-turn, you go to the dry cleaner, but it's closed because it's Remembrance Day, Veterans Day, whatever, but usually the things don't close that day, so you're just a little bit confused. And then you see the guy from that store at the liquor store, and you say to him, like, yo, what's up? Like, why aren't you open today? Because the dry cleaner shouldn't be closed on this. It's not a tax store holiday, right? So then whatever, the guy says, you know what, I'll buy you a beer. It's cool now. I get it. And then, so eventually I just know I'm going to get my dry cleaning. You know what I mean? You guys know what I'm saying? So that's my takeaway from the Nick Diaz interview earlier today.
Liked by the sound of violence.
All right, Aaron, what did you take away from that conversation? What stood out to you, once that interview was over today?
What I got for the Nick Diaz interview is, when you like go to the grocery store and you go and you check all the milk and you're looking at the dates, and some of them are expired, some of them aren't. But then when you go to your car in the parking lot, you go and you get in your car and you drive, and then when you figure out you're driving, you see the guy next to you and he gives you a look, and then you rev your engine a little bit, and it's time to race, but then the guy doesn't want to race, but you still want to race him, and then I know the guy's got like a family and stuff, but like I just can't wrap my head around why this guy with a family wants to race me all of a sudden, and then so I race him, but he's not going to race me. So then how am I supposed to race him? You know what I mean? Like, if he's not going to race, who's going to race in this situation? So then when you eventually get to the lights and you signal left, but then you want to make a right turn, and then suddenly you realize you haven't picked up your dry cleaning yet, so you make a U-turn, and you go to the dry cleaner, but it's closed because it's Remembrance Day, Veterans Day, whatever, but usually the things don't close that day, so you're just a little bit confused. And then you see the guy from that store at the liquor store, and you say to him like, "Yo, what's up? Like, why aren't you open today? Because the dry cleaner shouldn't be closed on this. It's not that store holiday, right?" So then the guy says, "You know what? I'll buy you a beer. It's cool now. I get it." And then so eventually, I just know I'm gonna get my dry cleaning. You know what I mean? You guys know what I'm saying? So that's my takeaway from the Nick Diaz interview earlier today.